So he's heading back to London to find out more about his famous ancestor.
Just about to pull into the gaff now. Hampton Court Palace, of course, it's Hampton Court Palace. My 15 times great-grandfather. Yeah.
He's come to meet Thomas Cromwell's biographer, Tracy Borman.
Welcome to Hampton Court.
Pleasure.
Well, congratulations.
So, yeah.
You're related to the most controversial man in British history.
Oh, most controversial.
I think so, yeah. In recent times, we've grown to love Thomas Cromwell, but he was always the villain of history.
Was he?
The man you love to hate.
Yeah, so he's a bit like Marmite, was he?
Exactly. So this is the sort of place where Cromwell would have been, literally burning the midnight oil as he was working for the king. This is the Great Hall, the centrepiece of Henry VIII's palace, built to impress, as you can see.
Yeah. You could have a right rave in here, couldn't you, Bobo?
And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And Cromwell would have been at quite a few of them. Would you like to see a picture?
I'd love to see a smudge of him.
Well, this was painted by the most famous portrait painter of the age, Holbein. And I think, actually, there is more than a passing resemblance. I have to say, yep, I do. I think around the nose, if you were to look a little bit more intimidating.
The puffy eyes, yeah, I get that bit, yeah.
What do you think of him?
Tell he liked his grub as well. We've got the jowls.
Yep, the Cromwell jowls.
The Cromwell jowls, I'm going to call it now.
There you
Yeah. That man, I've got his blood running through my veins. Excites me a lot, although I don't know that much about him, so...
Well, this portrait's got a lot to answer for, because it's, I think, largely due to this that people see him as a villain, because he does
Well, he's looking pretty sinister there, isn't he? Looking at somebody like he's about to maybe have them executed, or...
You wouldn't mess with him, would you?
Certainly not, no. Certainly not.
He wasn't of noble birth. He had very humble origins. He was born in about 1485 in Putney. Now, obviously, today, Putney is a nice part of London. It wasn't in the late 15th century when Cromwell was born. Not the sort of place you'd want to find yourself after dark. It was full of cutthroats and criminals, and one of the worst of all was Cromwell's father, Walter. He was a blacksmith and he was a brewer. He had his own pub, and he was always in trouble with the law.
And so he's managed this unbelievable rise from where he came from.
Yeah.
To be sitting with Henry from the slums to there. And I mean, mine's a much more small comparison, but I'm from the slums, if you like.
99% of the people at Henry's court were from wealthy backgrounds. He was extraordinary. You know, he was an absolute phenomenon.
It's ridiculous, that's what it is.
It is. I never thought I'd meet anybody who's related to Thomas Cromwell. That's extraordinary. Historians have speculated, what was it about this blacksmith's son that appealed to Henry? And certainly Henry recognised Cromwell's great talent. He was, by this time, he was a self-taught lawyer by this time. He was an exceptionally sharp man. I've always thought there was more to it than that. I think what appealed to Henry about Cromwell, he was cheeky. He would make the king laugh. And Henry loved that, because...
Would you say it was a difficult thing to make the king laugh?
I think it, yeah.
And if you ever set the mark with the king, you know, you were brown bread.
He was cheeky. He was known to be funny. He would make even his enemies laugh. But it's not all plain sailing between Henry and Cromwell. They're two quite big personalities, so you can imagine they clash.
Right.
And we've got a letter here written by a courtier.
So the king benave of him twice a week, and sometimes knock him well about the pate.
That's the head, yeah.
And yet when he have been well
Pommelled
about the head and shaken up, as it were a dog, he will come out into the great chamber, shaking of the bush with as merry a countenance as though he might rule all the roost. Oh, I see. So he takes a clump in.
Yeah.
And he just goes like that, picks himself up,
exactly.
and walks out as if he owns a manor.
That's absolutely
it's
it.
like, so what? Took the beating. he's proving to everyone he is the alpha male.
Absolutely. And it's funny you should say that about power. You know, by the middle of the 1530s, Cromwell is the most powerful man in England. There's only the king who's above him. He is Henry VIII's chief minister. He's running the show.
It's just ridiculous.
He is in charge of everything. And then the sort of highest that he rises is in 1540, and I think you'll like this. He is made Earl of Essex. And this is his heraldry as the Earl of Essex.
Which is where I live. Mm-hmm. So in a way, I'm sort of the Earl of Essex.
Yep, by descent.
I think it's going to change me as a human being. Not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but in a way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
In a positive way.
Yeah, can imagine.
Certainly going to give me more confidence.
So Cromwell, at this point of his career, seems utterly invincible, but I'm afraid things are about to go very horribly wrong.
Of course they are. Of course they are. I suppose he's getting very cocky. He's starting to push it too far, maybe, all these noblemen and well-educated people, and he's starting to rub their nose in it, isn't he?
Absolutely. And I'm afraid he's about to pay.
Tracy has led Danny to the Tower of London,
So you'll take me into a dungeon, are you?
I'm afraid so.
which is where, in June 1540, Danny's 15 times great-grandfather, Thomas Cromwell, was brought on charges of treason and heresy.
It was really a coup by his enemies at court, particularly the Duke of Norfolk. He'd always hated this base-born boy from Putney.
Yeah.
And he managed to convince Henry VIII that Cromwell was plotting treason, plotting to supplant the king himself, to marry the king's daughter, Mary. And the charges were ridiculous.
You know, Cromwell couldn't get into Henry's head, no? Because he was quite clever at getting into his head, and all of a sudden, he couldn't anymore.
His only chance of survival was to persuade Henry to change his mind. He wrote 3 letters to Henry, and we have a copy of the last letter here.
Beseeching most humble your grace to pardon this my rude writing, and to consider that I am a most woeful prisoner, ready to take the death when it shall please God and your majesty. Most gracious prince, I cry for mercy, mercy, mercy. So, my 15 times great-grandfather really is desperate now.
On the morning of the 28th of July, 1540, Thomas Cromwell was taken from his cell. Private executions within the walls of the Tower were reserved for those of blue blood. Tower Hill, with its huge mobs, was for the commoners, like Cromwell.
It takes 3 blows of the axe to sever Cromwell's head, and that head is then set on a spike and put on London Bridge alongside all the heads of all the traitors, there for everyone to see.
It's a weird feeling to
Yeah.
think that one of my ancestors, you know, would have suffered this. So he was born a commoner
Yeah,
and he died a commoner.
absolutely.
And he had that mad period in between.
He did. But a few years previous to his execution, he'd done something so clever that it was feathering the nest of the Cromwells for a long time to come. And that is to arrange an extraordinarily prestigious marriage for his son, Gregory. Now, this may be a portrait of the young Gregory, to the sister of Jane Seymour. This was the wife whom Henry was said to have loved more than all the others because she gave him a son. So you can imagine what an alliance for the Cromwells. They're now marrying into the royal family. It was a brilliant move on Cromwell's part. So, Danny, you're descended from the firstborn son of Gregory, whom they named in honour of the king. He was Henry.
No.
That's a bittersweet fact, I think.
That is bittersweet, isn't it?
Danny has discovered that his 14 times great-grandfather, Gregory Cromwell, was married to Elizabeth, the sister of Queen Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third and favourite wife.
To find out who I was related to was a lot for me to take in. And I've woke up today and I really want to find out about the Seymours. So that's why I'm today. I think that's the path I've chose.